And with us now for more live from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas headquarters in Manila, Governor Eli Remolona Jr. Good seeing you again, Gov. Eli, and a belated happy birthday.
Thank you. Good to see you, Kathy.
All right, so it's a surprise for the majority that Business World had surveyed, where 10 out of 16 expected a hold. So was it a unanimous decision by the Monetary Board to cut by 25 basis points?
It wasn't unanimous, but it was overwhelming, I would say, in favor of a cut.
Overwhelming in favor of a cut, but what about those
Yes.
who were not in favor of a cut?
They didn't explain themselves. I think the stories that emerged from the discussion were more in favor of a cut.
All right. Well, those that I've spoken with on this program who had hoped for a hold want to know, what was the thought process? What data were you looking at exactly? And that if you could provide more color on your view regarding the economic slowdown.
Well, the numbers changed, Kathy, and one reason for the change in the numbers was negative business sentiment. Once we factored that in, we found that growth would slow down in 2026, but recover and more than catch up in 2027. Inflation as well would be lower than we thought in 2026, but actually lower 2026 as well as in 2027. So that gave us more room to cut.
And is it lower inflation forecasts in the coming years because of even slower growth?
Partly because of that. Partly because of that.
Yeah, because if the Bangko Sentral was most concerned about growth because of the widening corruption probe, then
Yes,
it might have
yes.
done well to wait until November 7th when 3Q GDP data is out. You couldn't have possibly waited?
Well, our own projections suggested that business sentiment had turned negative, and when we factored that in, it told us that growth would slow down in 2026, as I said, but recover strongly in 2027.
Which brings us to how dire then an economic situation we're in, given that the sweet spot for the Q rate has now fallen somewhere, as you say, between 4 and 5%.
But the sweet spot issue is a different issue from the sentiment issue. It's we have better numbers now. We have a better model for doing it with the help of MIT actually, and now we think it's not really close to 5%. It's maybe closer to 4% in nominal terms.
Okay, but when you
So
talk about
that factored into the decision as well.
how about the transmission of the negative business sentiment, as you mentioned, to the sweet spot? Is that a matter of time before that happens? Have you factored that into the MIT forecasts?
No, we've done it separately. The MIT numbers were done before the flood control scandal. So it would have factored into a rate cut somewhat, but the scandal and the business sentiment associated with it, I think, made it clearer that we needed a rate cut.
Could it have factored in a 50 basis point cut instead of 25?
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't that dire.
Okay, but you talked about the output gap, and that's one thing that you've mentioned, that the estimates
Yes,
on the output
yes,
gap
yeah.
need to be recalibrated because it's wider than you thought, and that your Goldilocks rate suggests that you have more room to move.
Yes,
So,
it could.
so
So
how
the
much?
Goldilocks rate, yeah.
Yeah.
Goldilocks rate could be lower than we thought. There's some uncertainty about the numbers. The output gap, as you know, it's a difference between our estimate of the capacity of the economy and demand for the output, and that the demand has weakened, and so the output gap is somewhat wider than before in our numbers.
So how much of an interest rate differential are you then willing to sacrifice to support growth without coming at the expense of rate competitiveness and inflation?
We're still refining our calculations. This is a kind of an adjustment to our model, but as I said, there's some room for a cut, but it depends on how much recovery we see in growth.
What could potentially mean a recovery in growth? What are the metrics that you're looking at?
I think one big factor would be a revival in business confidence. When we looked at the numbers, the stock market fell from end July to most of September, about 4%, I think. And then our surveys suggest that fewer companies have plans for expansion, so that figured into our calculations. There is a silver lining, Kathy, because we see growth slowing down up to 2026, and then we see a strong recovery from 2026. We anticipate that the scandal will be resolved, and we'll know it when we see it, and we'll see it in the stock market. We'll see it in our surveys.
But that's a year off. A silver lining, that means a lot more waiting. Are you not seeing a silver line in the near term?
Well, the numbers I gave you are yearly numbers, but actually the recovery should begin in 2026.
In the meantime, Governor, could that possibly or probably mean an intermeeting rate cut? There's just one more scheduled policy meeting in December before the year is out.
That's right. That's right. It's possible, Kathy. It's possible. One more 25 basis point cut.
Could that mean intermeeting or in the December meeting?
Not intermeeting. No, it's probably something really bad has to happen for us to do it off cycle. I think we're most likely, if we do something, it will be during a scheduled policy meeting.
Could you define for us what's bad?
Well, if the growth numbers turn out to be, the indicators of growth turn out to be really bad, then we might do it. But I don't see that. I don't see that in the next few months.
So that would mean waiting for the GDP out on November 7th, third quarter GDP, for an indication of how bad.
That's right. That's right. Well, we're looking at a lot of other numbers as well. We now look at many what I would call soft data indicators. Those numbers have become more important than before.
Exactly, because when we looked at the September PMI data, it already fell below 50. And that means contraction.
It suggests some contraction. It didn't fall that much. It's still below. The 50 is kind of the neutral number for that data. It's below 50. So it suggests some weakness, but not a lot.
What data or development would compel a 50 bips cut, and in one go, intermeeting or not?
I think if those numbers, including the stock market numbers, surprise us on the low side, then it might suggest a 50 basis point cut.
Could you define what a concern would be in the stock market and the peso?
Well, for now, we don't see anything that would lead to that. So that's kind of a risk that's, I would say, possible, but very low probability.
Because the 50 basis points of a cut could cause panic.
Well, it's done if it would be done if what we're seeing is what we call a hard landing. But apart from that, we don't contemplate a 50 basis point cut.
All right, well, let's check on the markets. I'm seeing a continued drop and weakness in the Philippine peso after the surprise cut. We're at 58.42 the dollar. And the PSEI has also fallen by just about 0.1% at the start of trade at 9:30. We're at 6,051.
Yes. The weakness in the peso might be partly because of the cut that we did yesterday.
It is, but you did mention as well that new to your model is the importance of issues relating to government infrastructure spending. And given that the president has suspended several government flood control projects for the year and canceled all the new flood control projects next year, what impact do you think might that have on the government's GDP forecast for the year and next?
It's a reduction in government spending, so that does have some effect on growth. I still think the bigger effect is the one from business sentiment. Now, the cut in spending is temporary, so it's they're gonna go back to spending in a few months. So that will help, and I think depending on how the corruption scandal is resolved, we could see a recovery in business sentiment and actually we see a strong recovery in growth starting in late 2026.
Could you give us exactly some color of the negative business sentiment that propelled and compelled the Monetary Board to cut by 25?
Well, the significant development was a decline in the stock market from around end July to through September. It has recovered since, but that decline was very striking. And so when we factored that into our measure of business sentiment, and we factored that into our macro model, then it suggested a significant slowdown, not a deep slowdown, but a significant one, enough to justify a cut in the policy rate.
But when governance is the main issue, to what extent is monetary accommodation effective in restoring business investor confidence and the real economy, not just the capital markets?
As you know, Kathy, our tools are demand-side tools, and to the extent that business sentiment affects demand, then a cut makes a difference.
And it will, because that GDP forecast may have to be revised. And we're looking at the lower end of the government's 5.5% to 6.5% GDP forecast for the full year. So how much might we be off from reaching even the lower end of 5.5%?
We're saying in 2026, we had thought it would be 5.6, and now we think it might be 5.3 for GDP growth. But then we see a strong recovery in 2027. You know, Kathy, we had thought we would see higher growth rates in 2023 and 2024, but we didn't get those growth rates, and now we know why, because now we know that what we thought was investment wasn't investment. So but that's in the past. Now we're looking forward to a better trajectory for our growth.
Yeah, but when past is catching up with the present and the future, then one will also think about the top end of that forecast of 6.5%. So might that also mean a revision?
I say that again, Kathy.
A revision on the top end of
the
the
past
forecast of 6.5%.
We're saying 6.3 in 2027, but the past, as you can see, is extending itself up to the early part of 2026.
As for the peso, you did say that you will defend the peso if the depreciation is so sharp and so large that it will become inflationary. So how then would a sharp depreciation look like?
We're not looking at depreciations from one day to the next. We're looking at what we call streaks of peso weakness that may take place over several weeks, and we have seen such streaks in the past. And when those streaks happened, it clearly led to some inflation pressure. So that's what we worry about.
Did you intervene in those moments of streaks?
Yes, we have a playbook for those episodes.
How much of an intervention were we talking about in those consecutive days of decline in the peso?
Well, enough to dampen the streak. I don't think we can prevent the peso from depreciating entirely, but we can slow down the depreciation.
Do you have a ceiling for the depreciation that would be a
We don't-
cause for concern?
We don't have a ceiling, Kathy. We don't have a target.
As Anti-Money Laundering Council Chair, you have secured your fifth freeze order on October 8th. Now, that is part of the ongoing investigation into the
Yes,
anomalous
yes,
flood control
yes.
projects. The total is already at 4.4 billion pesos. So how much more
Yes.
can we expect?
Well, we're freezing more and more accounts. So far, I think we've frozen 1,600 bank accounts. We're continuing to look, and the work continues. There will be more accounts. We will make more announcements about more accounts that are frozen.
As more
So it's
accounts
a continuing effort.
It's a continuing effort as more accounts are frozen. How's the health of the banking system looking?
The health looks good. The health actually looks good. We still have a lot of capital in the banks. We still have a lot of liquidity in the banks. There's no sign of or no risk of an imminent crisis in the banking system.
Do we have a
Thankful-
figure of what crisis
thankfully.
means? What does crisis translate to?
A crisis is when you begin to see deposit runs. Then that would be a crisis.
So AMLAC needs to go through the Court of Appeals to secure approvals, as I understand, to freeze more of those assets. So how's the call coming along for a lifting of the bank secrecy law?
I don't know, actually, Kathy. We would be in favor of it, but we haven't seen any progress on that side of things.
On September 25th, you did say that you backed it when I visited you at the Bangko Sentral. Are you then retracting that support for the lifting of the bank secrecy law?
No, we still back it. The reason it matters is because when we try to freeze an account, there's a long process of having to go to the Court of Appeals, and then if you're delayed in freezing an account by a few days, and some of the money would have left by then, by the time you get the order.
And this brings us back to concerns that we might just be returned to the gray list. I mean, is the Philippines a
yes,
more dangerous place to do business after what's gone on so far?
We're worrying about that, Kathy, and we're doing our best. We certainly don't want to be back on the gray list. It took a lot of work to get out of the gray list, so we don't want to go through that again.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and a good belated happy birthday weekend, Gov. I hope you enjoy
Thank you,
it.
Kathy.
You worked so hard this week. Governor Eli
Congratulations
Remolona.
again.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Gov. Eli Remolona of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas.